What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. It's Duke time. We've been playing around, talking about FSU blowout, talking about other things. Now it's time to really lock in on the Duke game, what Duke brings to the table, taking a look at the stats, really breaking down this matchup as best we can. Also, I won't say big win for Canes Hoops against St. Leo, but they won. They look good, and we got to see a lot of exciting young players in that exhibition game. So Pete's going to have his thoughts. He was there in person on what he saw from Miami Hurricanes basketball as we gear up for what needs to be a bounce-back season for Coach L's squad. First, I want to talk about some folks that don't need to bounce back, and that is Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
D, I'm disappointed in myself, man. This is the second time I think I've done this season, but I'm wearing, Duke colors here. I even have this G here, which has nothing to do with Duke. It has the font of some Duke sort of script. I don't know. I apologize though. I think I did it during USF week, so I gotta be more cognizant of it. But yeah, man, excited to talk Canes hoops later in the show. Miami consistently dominates Duke there as well, so I think should go hand in hand with our football discussion.
Well, look, I know your allegiance to fashion goes ahead of your allegiance to the Canes, so I'm not going to get mad at you. But yeah, this Duke game, look, it's a different kind of Duke game in terms of two good teams, right? A lot of times when Duke is usually down, Miami's usually average, and Miami takes care of them. Lately, Duke has been escalating to where they're both pretty average, and Duke can beat Miami. This year, you have a very good Miami team, a top 10 Miami team, and a Duke team that's already bowl eligible, 6-2, looking very good under Manny Diaz. So this is probably the biggest Miami Duke game on paper, maybe ever. If Manny would have been able to beat Rhett Lashley last week, which really just came down to a field goal that got blocked by Miami transfer Jafari Harvey, we'd be talking about potentially College game day in Coral Gables for this game. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. They lost a close game in overtime, but a big game for Miami Duke standards.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, look, I wouldn't say they've necessarily won against any opponents that are worth much, and Florida State included. But the couple teams they've played with a pulse they've lost to. So this is a game that obviously Miami is a three score favorite in, and I think although Miami won the game convincingly last week, they probably kind of feel like as a team there were some more opportunities out there, right? And as Coach Cristobal said last week, they scored on 7 of their 8 possessions against Florida State, but I think they're going to be chomping at the bit to really get after it this week. And knowing that this is a solid Duke team in terms of their record and what they've done defensively, we'll get into the numbers now here in a second, but there's no reason that this Miami team shouldn't be ready to play against this team. I know we've been looking for that letdown game, and they've had some close calls, right? But it's hard to say, probably other than the Cal game, that in any other game they just didn't come out looking like they were ready to play.
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah, it's a big game to see if Miami wakes up at noon to play coming off a rivalry. It's a big game in terms of, obviously every game is a big game. You got to win every game. I'm just looking at the record here, Pete. So Duke against Elon, they win that one pretty easily. Close game against Northwestern, but a win. Close win against Connecticut, which is not the best team in the world. Blowout Middle Tennessee State, which I think we have more respect for that win after what's happened in Miami, although that's a struggling program. The win against Mac Brown, Manny Diaz's nemesis at North Carolina, close win, probably his biggest win of the season just from a personal standpoint.
And they were down in that game too.
Big. There's a lot of bad blood in that game. Lost to Georgia Tech in a decently close game, 14-24. Beats Florida State close, turned the ball over a ton. We saw that game. Really made Florida State make a lot of mistakes in that one, more so than they made against Miami, quite frankly. And then SMU, the field goal would have won it. They lost in overtime, going for 2 against his old charge, Rhett Lashley. So it's an interesting season for Manny. He's playing against his probably biggest rival, Mac Brown, who fired him. There's some bad blood there. Rhett Lashley, I think they have a pretty good relationship. I'm not sure. Manny obviously hired Rhett. I don't see why there'd be bad blood there, but that was obviously a game he wanted to win against his old assistant. Loses that one. Big ACC matchup as well, given where those teams are record-wise. Now this week against Miami, team that fired him, team that, really strung him along there late in the process. Mario's taking shots at Manny. Pretty much any chance he gets, just sort of emphasizing why the roster was so bad in that first year for Mario and what the rebuilding process was. So this is going to be kind of heated, I think, from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah, I think, just to kind of add into that point right there, I think Mario feels like probably the last 2 years of scrutiny he was getting was Manny's fault, which, I don't think that's completely fair to say, but I do think that there's a part of Mario that probably feels that, again, what he was left with, we saw the results, what they were, and that's why there was so much, stuff building up in the offseason, and everyone understood that, look, they did a great job in the offseason, but they still got to go out there and win games. And then from Manny's point of view, I think he's looking at it like, well, I didn't have any of this NIL resources. I probably could have recruited at that level, which Manny had never shown to be that sort of recruiter. Mario's recruited wherever he's been. So I think that's where the animosity potentially, lies.
And they're just very different people. Obviously one played football, one is more of an analytical guy. They're both Miami Cubans, but very, very different. Obviously, we can speak to this, Pete. Mario is kind of your classic Miami Cuban through and through. Went to Columbus, your alma mater, Pete. Speaks Spanish. Manny doesn't speak Spanish, went to school on the other side of town. So I think that plays a part in it. That's just my speculation. But, Pete, we know these dynamics. So I could see that being a real thing, on top of course, the fact that, look, Manny got fired in a way that a lot of people that like Manny were upset about the process. Mario comes in. Mario's got the team top 10. Manny ended up going to Penn State playing, or having his unit play very well, was a top defensive coordinator there, and now head coach at Duke, have them playing well. So really kind of everybody won, but that doesn't mean there's not a lot of bad blood along the way.
Yeah, and look, you got to give Manny credit, obviously, which is something that I don't know if I ever thought I'd do, but the way he's worked himself back up, if he was being honest with himself, he would have said he was not ready for that Miami job either, obviously, right? And not to harp on the past, but that was always the issue, is that he's at Temple, and you got to give him his chance to grow there as a coach. Obviously took his lumps here, but I think that, 21-point spread, I expect Miami to come out and give a really good shot at covering that this weekend.
Yeah, look, this game is very similar to FSU and different in a lot of ways. So different in the record. You're talking about a 1-7 team with FSU. Duke comes into the game 6-2, so that's obviously a big difference. Duke beat FSU. I think Duke is a team with a lot of positive momentum. The team believes in the coach. At least they're playing like that. They play hard. They play smart. They're getting the most out of their ability. FSU's the total opposite. Teams checked out. They're playing below their ability, and of course, they're 1-7. But the spread is pretty much identical depending on which book you use. I think the game plan for Miami might be pretty similar depending on how Duke comes out and plays them. But we'll talk about the matchup. But I could see a similar game where Miami doesn't exactly fill the air with footballs and just throw it all over the yard. They protect the ball, try to avoid the turnover, which is what Duke wants to create, just like what FSU wants to create. Maybe they take a couple sacks because of the blitz pressure, but they can overwhelm this team up front. I think Duke's a little stronger than FSU up front, not because of the talent, but just maybe because of the discipline in terms of fitting the run and being consistently physical and engaged. Talent-wise, FSU is better, but of course, Miami has the bigger team, and we'll get down to the numbers here. But I think at the end of the day, the problem that Duke faces is the same problem that FSU faces. If you don't have a good offense against Miami Hurricanes, no matter how good your defense plays and how many series you kill, the ball is going to go back to the Miami Hurricanes, and they're going to be able to score eventually, because nobody has stopped Miami from scoring this entire season.
All right, so should we get into the numbers here, D?
Yeah, let's pull them up.
All right, so we're starting on the offense side of the ball and scoot over there a little bit, D. I think you're other way. There you go. But yeah.
So some context on these stats. We always use team rankings when applicable, which is FBS against FBS, take away those FCS games. So if those numbers look a little different than something you may have seen elsewhere, that's the reason. These are teamrankings.com. So scoring offense, Duke, 69th in the country, 26 points per game. Obviously not where you want to be. Not as bad as FSU last week. but not a very dynamic offense. And when you dig into the yard numbers, they're actually way worse than the scoring offense. I think the scoring offense benefits from the turnovers that this Duke team creates, which we'll talk about in a second. But when you look at the actual offense down, yards per play, they're 103rd in the country, 4.9. This to me is the best offensive stat, measures efficiency. Miami, of course, number 1 in the nation. Duke 103rd, 4.9 yards per play. Yards per pass, so the passing efficiency, this is any pass. So it's not just completions. So if you get a lot of incompletions, that number goes down. If you don't generate big chunk plays, the number goes down. Duke, 112th in the nation, 6.3 yards per pass. So not a very efficient passing offense. One area where they're surprisingly good, especially for Duke, which has had trouble up front in the past, sack percentage. So this is basically what percentage of your dropbacks result in a sack when you're on offense. 28th in the country, 3.6%. That's actually better than Miami this year, where Miami had previously been strong last year up front. Duke's actually protecting the quarterback better than Miami this year, which is an interesting stat. And really the one stat where Duke excels. Yards per rush, 100th in the country, 3.6 yards per carry. Again, so you're looking at pass and rush, both in that 100 range. Third down percentage, 127th in the country, so they're struggling on third down. Rushing play percentage, this is the percentage of rushing plays versus pass plays. They're 98th, it's 47.81%. So what that tells you is they're more of a pass-heavy team than a run-heavy team. 98th in the country in rush play percentage. Tackles for loss allowed, not bad. 23rd in the nation. 20-yard pass plays, 84th. So not the most explosive offense, not the most efficient offense. With scoring, I think the reason that number's higher, again, is as we'll get into on the other side, they don't have to always drive the full length of the field because their turnovers are so frequent on the defensive end.
Yeah, just looking at these numbers, it's like last week, Florida State had one of the worst offenses in the country, and Miami did what they had to do in that one to stifle them. I said it yesterday on the show with Mike, but look, knowing that this is such a bad offense, I think it would just be huge for the defense's confidence, for Miami's defense's confidence, to string together a couple weeks here in a row. And I think there's a huge opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And let's flip it to the defensive side of the ball, because this is really where it gets interesting to me. So Manny Diaz, defensive coach, he's replacing Mike Elko as a defensive coach. There's a defensive infrastructure in place. Personnel's pretty good on Duke's end on defense for Duke. They have some nice linebacker transfers from the FCS that are playing well. And again, Elko's built this as a defensive program, so it makes sense that this would be a seamless transition from defensive guy to defensive guy. Scoring defense, 29th in the country, 20.9 points per game. Yards per play defense, where Manny's usually pretty good. 15th in the nation, 4.7 yards per play. Yards per pass, this is the number to watch. 6th in the nation, 6.6 yards per pass. So you're dealing with the number 1 passing offense in the country with Miami Hurricanes against top 6 yards per pass efficiency defense in Duke. Sack percentage defense, 48th in the country. So, they do get pressure, but it's not like a dominant sack team like Manny usually has. Manny usually living in the top 10 in this category, where there's Penn State, Miami. They usually get a ton of sacks. Here, 48th in the country, not as prolific on the sacks, but tackles for loss, second nationally, 8.88 tackles for loss per game. Miami's one of the best tackle for loss avoiding offenses in the country. How many runs have you seen with Fletcher and Martinez where they get stopped in the backfield? That's a matchup to watch. Sort of a strength on a strength, battling out who's going to win there. Third down percentage defense, Duke's very good. 13th in the nation, 30.91%. That's another Manny trademark. Takeaways per game, again, we talked about the top. Second in the nation, 2.7 per game. That's going to be the key to Duke if they're going to win this game or stay in it. 20-plus yard pass plays, or 20-yard plus plays allowed, 16th in the nation. So take the graphic off there, Pete. Let's talk. To me, the real story is just those two. Can Miami avoid tackles for loss and maintain favorable down and distance on offense? And can Miami protect the ball when they're going against this Duke pressure?
Yeah, and they haven't really been tested in that respect. We haven't seen, what happens if they are in these 3rd and 8 to 3rd and 10 plus consistently. It just hasn't happened, right? So that to me is we've seen them down in games, but it's not like the offense wasn't going at certain points of those games already, right? So some weird stuff happened in the Cal game, but yes, I think it's going to be a different sort of test than we've seen, because by the numbers, it's as good of a defense as Miami's seen all year.
Yeah, I think the key is when Miami's on defense playing against the Duke offense, make them be bad. In other words, it sounds so basic.
But kind of like what they did last week against Florida State.
Right. You don't have to be exceptional on defense. And it's not like you're playing great offenses. You need to slow down and play extra well. This is a bad offense. Don't allow them to outperform what they usually do. If Miami can just hold serve with Duke's offense, again, not do anything exceptional, which they're capable of with guys like Ruben Bain, but if they just don't do anything exceptional, Duke's offense is not going to score enough to keep up in this game. They're going to give the ball back to Miami too many times, similar to what you saw against FSU. And Miami's offense is too prolific, too balanced. Even if they have a couple bad drives, to struggle for an extended part of the game. They're going to score a lot of points. I don't care who's on the other side, unless it's a Georgia or a team that really has superior athletes and NFL players. As efficient and smart as this Duke team is, Miami is just as efficient and smart on offense with better players. So I don't see Duke stopping Miami for the course of a game. They're going to need to, number one, get turnovers. Number two, play better on offense than they have all season against a Miami team that's had their bad moments. Against Cal, which was not a prolific offense. Against Virginia Tech, which is also not a prolific offense.
But I mean, look, Malik Murphy hasn't been great, but who's to say he doesn't have a career day like some of these other guys Miami's faced? Because he's got ability.
Yeah, Texas transfer, big arm. That's what you need to avoid. Kyron Drones had his best day against Miami. Fernando Mendoza, who I think is actually pretty good. Actually, I think both those guys.
Yeah.
I think both those guys are better than Malik Murphy. Let me start there.
Yeah,
but they played better against Miami than they played in other games. You can't let that happen with Malik Murphy. He's a very inconsistent passer, below 60%. 17 touchdowns, 5 picks, not bad in that respect, but he's just not consistent down to down. And the problem with the matchup for Duke here is every bad drive they have gives Miami another opportunity to score. And you just are not going to slow down this offense with Cam Ward for an extended period of time. It's the same problem FSU have. To me, the teams that really present a threat to Miami are teams like Louisville. If you look on the schedule now, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, teams that can at least score and make it a shootout. So if you get a couple turnovers here and there, maybe you can outscore Miami. I don't see that with Duke. Now, this is Miami Hurricanes. Last 20 years, these are the games you lose. You lose to Pittsburgh when you're rolling in 2017. You lose, how many games have they lost in November, period? November's been the worst month for the Miami Hurricanes for the past 2 decades. So I don't want to say anything is
off the table.
But I'm just trying to explain why this is a 20-point spread for this game. And I think the reason is that when you're a team like Miami with such a dominant offense and you're playing a team that their strength is defense, but they don't have like Georgia personnel or Texas personnel, it's a problem because Miami's going to score.
Yeah, agreed. Should be interesting. We'll get the perspective from the Duke side tomorrow. So we'll hear. I'm sure there's a lot of excitement up there. Maybe a little bit of deflation after the way that game ended last week. But that Manny Mario matchup is very intriguing.
Yeah, you were breaking down the post-game handshake potentially on the show yesterday with Mike Ryan and Joe Tess, which, by the way, if you haven't seen that was unbelievable. Joe Tessitore, what juice. He's going to have the call for the Miami Duke game, and he was absolutely electric. The way he orders steak and wine and drinks. I don't even eat meat or drink, but I want to start those things just so I can order like Joe Tess did on the show yesterday. He broke it down with this. If you're in Louisville, Kentucky, he gave you about 7 steakhouse recommendations off the top of the dome. I think he also had one for Naples. You should have asked him about that spot. What's that place in Naples that Jose
Seat to table.
We got to ask about that one next time.
Shout out to Jose Lasso.
Anyways, Pete, you were at the game yesterday for UM basketball. I was at the Heat game, so I'm going to watch it now here when I get home and give my thoughts down the road as we do our season preview. But you were there live.
Yeah.
What did you see from the Miami Hurricanes in their win against St. Leo exhibition?
Real quick before we get into that, just want to talk about Asset Dash, the only app you need in crypto. You see the QR code right there. Scan to download the app and hit promo code Canes at login, all caps. You will receive a free upgraded premium Asset Dash Gold membership, free for life. Download Asset Dash for all your portfolio tracking needs, cryptos, NFTs, and stocks. Again, Asset Dash downloader. You see the QR code right here. But the last night exhibition, I was pumped up about it. As we said here on the live show earlier with Mike. But to me, right off the bat, a couple things stood out. And yes, it's St. Leo's, but you have a lot more capable bodies this year. You have a lot more depth this year than you had really the last 2 seasons, and that's including the Final Four team. Obviously, what a team that was. And I'm not saying that this team is that, but you have a lot of guys who can play on this team, right? Matthew Cleveland did not play last night, so AJ Staten McCray started in his spot, so I expect him to really be the sixth man, but he brings a lot of versatility. We've talked about him a ton. Nigel Pack and Blackman started at the 1 and the 2 there. And that'll be an interesting thing to see them play together this year. I think more so for the defensive side of the ball, as we said, but both those guys can light it up. Jalil Bethea, as soon as he got in the game, I mean, I texted you, wow, you were at the Heat game. And literally he gets in the game and 3 possessions in a row. Buckets that were just like, you could just tell it was different. No one else, I don't think, on the floor, on Miami side especially, I don't think anyone else was capable of that right there. So I think he will elevate himself into that starting lineup sooner rather than later. And then Lynn Kidd, Brandon Johnson are going to give you a completely different element inside. Brandon Johnson, a lot of his clips that we saw, D, when we talked about him, were him shooting from deep, but really was using his body inside, had 12 boards last night. Really good body positioning on the rebound, strong hands, really snatches it out of the air. And then Lynn Kidd, it's just crazy how different this offense is going to look with the potential outside game, D, because Omier did all of his scoring inside, but how effective was posting him up? That wasn't always going to be the best way to get your offense. Sometimes they had to out of necessity, but you got a legit 6'10", 6'11" guy in there who can get to the hoop. And, against certain teams, they're going to have to send the double team there, and you have shooters around him. So those were my initial thoughts. I don't know how much you caught of the game. I'll let you jump in here. I have a couple more things to say, but
I just saw the highlights again. I'm going to rewatch it or watch the whole game here when I get off this pod. But I want to ask you, the freshman. You mentioned Jalil Bethea, which, by the way, I sat down with Jalil for Storm Sessions with the University of Miami. If you haven't checked out my interview series with the University of Miami Storm Sessions, please like and subscribe to that, just like and subscribe to this podcast as well. But that one, we sit down with Cam Ward, Inez Cooper, Mish Powell, and then Jalil Bethea was the most recent episode. He was awesome, super polished for an 18-year-old, really impressed with him personally. And then just seeing the highlights of some of the ways he was able to score yesterday. What did you see, Pete, from Jalil specifically? I know you mentioned a little bit, but just breaking down his game and first impressions, and then the other 3 freshmen in the class.
First of all, it already looks like he's putting some good weight on. I mean, that was something that you and I mentioned when we watched him in the McDonald's All-American week. Was he could add some weight. Obviously, ACC play, guard play in the ACC. It's going to be physical, and you're going to play against a lot of guys who have been around the block. And I think, number one, he looks like he's already starting to put some good weight on. And again, just his effortlessness in terms of getting those buckets, right? I mean, he got ejected in the second half, unfortunately, so we really didn't get to see him much after that little spurt that he had because they didn't make the rotations until late into the second half there. So it was unfortunate we couldn't see him again, but he can get his own buckets, D. I think that was a huge issue with this team last year. Nigel Pack was hurt for most last year, but Nigel Pack's he's a shooter from distance. That's going to open up the rest of his game. But you need a guy to really break down defenders. I think a couple years ago, McGusty was a guy who could get his own bucket. Jordan Miller was a guy who could do so many different crafty things on the low block and taking it to the hoop, and his scoops around the bucket.
Wong
was the bucket getter, ultimate guy in ISO for this team. Bethea, I think, really brings you that element that I think Brandon Johnson can do it to a certain extent a different way. It's not, you know, I think he's a guy who has the inside outside capabilities. But Bethea, I don't know that there's many people in the country with his skill set, and there's a reason why he's a top 5 to 10 projected pick already.
So Schwartz, Isaiah Johnson, Arrigu.
Isaiah Johnson Arrigu didn't play last night. I don't know if he was banged up. They didn't mention anything. Maybe a freshman, you know, those unannounced suspensions. So I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on anything, but he didn't play last night. A couple more players we pretty much have talked about everyone who played last night, but a couple guys I want to shout. Schwartz missed a couple shots. He played, let me see the box score here. He played about 14 minutes. But you know, I wouldn't say he got involved much outside of the shooting. He had an assist, but I think he's a guy who his game's going to continue to develop. He's a microwave scorer. Again, didn't see it last night, but Divine Ugochukwu was a guy at the point guard position who he's an interview that I haven't posted yet for Media Day, but I asked him, describe your game to me. He said, I'm a pass first point guard, can defend, and man, really impressive. 6 assists, but some really nice. I mean, when you see a young guard like him with the decisiveness, the ability to put the ball on the floor and just get to the hoop, and then he's going there, understanding maybe he's not going to try to score, but penetrating to then kick or dump down, which he did a couple times. Dump down to Yusuf Basa Ama, who was playing a lot last night. You know, without Kyrie Hugh as the backup, he's hurt right now. But Divine Ugochukwu ended up with 6 assists. Really like what I saw. Good length. He's about 6'3", I would say, but already pretty strong, willing to defend. I think he's going to get some time as this season goes on, D, because you need guys who can defend the guard spot. You have scorers right now between Pack, Blackman, and Bethea, but it remains to be seen those guys on the defensive end, how they're going to look against some of these top teams in the country.
I got one more guy I want to ask you about, but with respect to Divine, how do you look athletically?
Good. I mean, he looked quick. I'm telling you, he looks strong. We talk about play strength in football, and we talk about it with receivers a lot of times. I think it's similar for a young guard like that. I think Keyshawn George early on last year struggled with the play strength, right? We saw him getting bigger, but he would run into some of these veteran guys in the ACC who've been around for 3, 4, 5 years. And as soon as they get their body on him a little bit, your momentum is stopped. He's a guy who's getting downhill, and I mean, was really that first step was explosive, and contact didn't seem to bother him, right? He would get in the pack, be in the middle of the paint with 2, 3 guys around him, and he wouldn't panic. And some of that's physical strength, but a lot of it too was just his wherewithal. I was really impressed with. And Paul Jobay was the other guy I wanted to mention, D, because he was a guy last year, late signee. ESPN had him as a 4-star recruit, I believe, right? But asked some people around the program about him before the season. They honestly, you know, this wasn't necessarily a coach, but some people in there that I talked to didn't know what to expect. Oh, there's a ways to go. Has to play a lot last year because of the depth issues on the team and the injuries. Probably would have been a redshirt guy, but man, he's put on a lot of good weight. D, his shot was not very pretty last year. It looks like he's worked on that a lot. Hit a couple 3-point shots, but looked decisive. He looked like he was forcing them to guard him, right? As soon as he got the ball, you got to be ready. There's something that Justice Winslow always annoyed me with. It looked like he disrupted the flow once he got the ball in his hands. Last night, Jobay, again, St. Leo's, but gets the ball, either is quick on the shot, puts it right on the floor, pass, but you gotta be ready to do something with it. And he looked way more confident offensively. Defensively, his length is. I mean, I think he's gonna play a lot of the 4, maybe the 5 at times when you're going up against a smaller unit. But yeah, man, I think the depth on this team overall is just way better than it was the last couple seasons.
Yeah, Jobay was who I wanted to ask you about. Sorry, Jobay. Leo France France has been producing a lot of players. It's becoming the number 2 basketball nation in the country, in the world, before the U.S., past the U.S.
Soccer player. Another guy I interviewed who he told me that he didn't really focus on basketball until later teenage years, and moves to the States. That's when he starts focusing on it. But I think he was 14 years old, D. So, I mean, this is a guy who's still very raw. Said he was a midfielder, and he was like 6'2" as a midfielder, which he's like 6'7", 6'8" now. But if you know about soccer, the midfielder, man, you got to be able to do it all. You got to be able to defend. You got to be able to pass. You got to be able to get forward and attack, and you got to be smart too. So this is a guy who I think his ceiling is probably higher than what some people maybe thought before he got here. And I think he'll be a pivotal role player for this team. You talk about his length, Staten McRae's length on the wing, Isaiah Johnson-Arrigu, who didn't play last night, like I said, but you've got some guys on the wings that can defend, pretty much 1 through 4, and some of them can even defend the 5.
Yeah, and he's, Keyshawn George is from Switzerland, but really played in France and was developed in France. I wonder if it's because of pipeline for Miami. With the amount of French talent that's coming out, obviously some of those guys go straight to the pros, either in Europe or in America. But some of these guys got to go to college, I imagine, and develop. Maybe they come over for high school, like Joubert did when he went to high school in Florida. Then you get them there. Get these ascendant athletes from France. They're going to want to go to Miami over, Connecticut or some of these other places that aren't going to be as, I think, enticing for someone who is a French speaker coming from a different country to America. I think Miami is going to be more of a cultural fit for a lot of these guys, and they got a lot of talent. I mean, Keyshawn George, while we're talking about him, I know he's not French, but he was developed in France. Look at him last night, man. 11 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, 3 steals for the Washington Wizards in a win against Atlanta Hawks. I am personally shocked that he is playing in the minutes he's playing, based on what we saw last year.
I think it's great for him. He needed to play all of this. I mean, that's the only way you're going to develop in the league. And I think that's something we were talking about. It was probably better that he got picked where he got picked, to the Wizards, a team that's been willing to play a lot of young guys. So yeah, it's interesting. Miami did a tour in France a couple years ago. The basketball team went over there. So I'd imagine that the staff picked up, because you play the French developmental teams over there when you go over there. I would imagine they got some intel and hopefully creating a pipeline, like you said.
By the way, if you want to get that Hurricanes basketball gear, get ready for the games coming up. Go to the Miami Hurricane team store. It's MiamiHTS.com online. You can also go to the store next to the Thesis Hotel right there on South Dixie Highway. Use promo code INSIGHT20, get 20% off your first item. They got all kinds of basketball gear. They even got Cam Ward basketball jerseys. I don't know how people from the basketball team feel about that. I'm sure they want their own jersey out there, but you can get a Cam Ward basketball jersey, the Cam Ward football jersey, all kinds of basketball gear and football gear at Miami HTS. They got the state champion shirt, just a ton of stuff there, a ton of great kind of fashion forward designs I've seen. They're partnering with some cool brands on some interesting stuff. And then of course you got the replica Cam Ward. Again, for pretty much all items, aside from certain NIL items, use promo code INSIGHT20, you get 20% off your first item at Miami Hurricane Team Store. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. We're going to continue to dig into Duke before the big game. And then, of course, after the game, I'm sure me and Pete will do a post game, have a breakdown of that. But we'll be going every single day this week and probably pretty much every day next week. We got Hurricanes basketball gearing up, so we're going to have coverage of every single game, everything that happens with that program. And, of course, as the Miami Hurricanes get into playoff mode for football, trying to make that run, trying to win the ACC, and trying to land this recruiting class. A lot of recruiting stuff coming up too. Like and subscribe to this podcast. Appreciate everybody. Go Canes.
Go Canes.
This an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew. Down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news. Cause it's all about the you. And nobody do it like CanesInSight. 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 It's CanesInSight.